I gave him my kidney. That's not a metaphor. I literally went under the knife to save his life. 1 year later, he walked out the door with my best friend. And while they thought I was left broken, they didn't know I had one thing left to give. If you've ever been betrayed by the two people you trusted most, you'll understand why I couldn't just walk away. Stay with me, because what I did next wasn't just revenge. It was personal and perfectly planned. I met Chris when I was 26, working at a small nonprofit in Seattle. He walked into a fundraising event as one of the corporate donors, a sharply dressed man with a crooked smile and this calm confidence that made you want to lean in and listen. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He just had presence. And when he noticed me fumbling with the wine glasses, he stepped in like a natural. That night, we talked until they turned the lights off. Chris worked in finance, managing investment portfolios for tech startups. He was smart, grounded, and surprisingly humble for someone in his field. While my world was all about causes and people, his was numbers and strategies, but we clicked in the spaces between. I fell for his steadiness, his reliability. He made me feel safe, and after years of men who treated love like a game, Chris felt like coming home. We got married 2 years later in a modest outdoor ceremony. It wasn't grand or expensive, but it was ours. Every promise we made felt real, anchored not just in passion, but in choice. I didn't just love Chris. I trusted him with everything. For the first few years, our life was simple. Dinners at home, weekend hikes, movie nights with cheap wine and homemade popcorn. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. And more than that, we were close. He made coffee every morning before I woke up. I packed his lunch with little sticky notes that said things like, "You're my favorite human," or "Let's adopt a dog this weekend." We laughed a lot. We fought, sometimes, sure. But it never felt like the kind of fighting that could break something. Just life. Then, 3 years into our marriage, everything changed. Chris collapsed at work. He was diagnosed with a rare genetic kidney disorder, one that had gone undetected for years. His kidneys were failing fast. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room, staring at him hooked up to machines, my brain refusing to process the words the doctor was saying. He needed a transplant, soon, and none of his family were matches. But I was. Without hesitation, I offered. There wasn't even a question in my mind. Of course I would do it. Of course I would give him a piece of myself, literally, because when you love someone the way I loved Chris, you don't keep score. You don't measure sacrifice. You just do. The surgery was successful. Chris recovered quickly, physically at least. But something shifted after that. It started small. He got quieter, distant. He stopped doing the little things. No more morning coffee, no more sticky notes. I told myself it was just the aftermath of a major medical trauma, that he needed time. Healing isn't just physical, after all. But there were moments, fleeting, subtle, where I'd catch him staring out the window, jaw clenched, eyes blank. Moments where he'd pull away from my touch just slightly, like it surprised him. Or worse, like it annoyed him. Still, I didn't let myself go there. Not yet, because I'd just given him my kidney, and people don't walk away from that, right? After Chris came home from the hospital, our life didn't return to normal. It rewrote itself into something unfamiliar. He didn't complain, didn't lash out, didn't even cry. He just disengaged. He'd sit through dinners like a ghost, eyes fixed on his phone or the TV. He said he was tired, that he was adjusting, that I should give him space. So I did. I gave him space. I gave him patience. I gave him every excuse I could think of, because the alternative, that something was wrong between us, was too painful to face. I threw myself into routine: work, cooking, cleaning, checking on his medication schedule. I even started volunteering at the community library again, just to stay busy. We stopped doing date nights, stopped touching, stopped laughing. In the middle of that emotional silence, she started showing up again. Madison, my best friend since college. We'd shared dorm rooms, bad boyfriends, secret pizzas at 2 a.m. She was the kind of person who lit up any room, sarcastic, bold, effortlessly magnetic. While I stayed in Seattle to build a quiet life, Madison had bounced from city to city chasing big jobs and bigger love stories. But she always came back eventually, always called me her anchor. Chris liked her. From the very beginning, they got along easily. Too easily, I used to joke. We'd all hang out together. Movie nights, game nights, weekend brunches. It was comfortable, safe, and besides, I trusted Madison like a sister. When Chris was sick, Madison was incredible. She flew in from Denver the day after his diagnosis, brought me food at the hospital, slept on the tiny couch beside me, held my hand through every terrifying update. I told everyone I couldn't do this without her. But after the surgery, when Chris started pulling away, Madison stuck around longer than usual. She said she was worried, that she just wanted to be there for both of us. And I believed her. At first, but then there were moments, little things, that didn't sit right. I'd come home and find them laughing in the kitchen. The kind of laughter I hadn't heard from Chris in months. One night, I saw her hand on his shoulder, a little too familiar. Another time, I walked in and they stopped talking mid-sentence, exchanged this look I couldn't quite read. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was projecting my fear onto the people I loved most. But then came the dinner party. It was just the three of us. Madison brought wine. Chris actually smiled, and for a second, I felt hopeful, like maybe we were finding our rhythm again. But halfway through the meal, Chris made a joke. A very specific inside joke that only Madison and I used to share back in college. I froze, looked at her. She froze too, just for a second, and then smiled like nothing happened. It was tiny, insignificant maybe, but it hit me like a slap. They had talked, deeply, intimately, about things I didn't know had even come up. Things that belonged to me and her. Our shared memories. Now theirs. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't scream or accuse, but I didn't sleep either. For the first time, I felt something inside me. Split. It started with toothbrushes. One morning, while cleaning the bathroom, I noticed Madison's toothbrush, one she used to keep in the guest drawer, was now in the same holder as ours, right next to Chris's. It wasn't like her to be careless. Madison was chaotic in most things, but not this. Not appearances. I didn't say anything, just moved it back. The next day, it was there again. Then it was the mug. Chris had this navy blue mug with a chip on the rim that he hated. It had been in the back of our cabinet for years. I caught Madison using it one morning, curled up on our couch like she belonged there. She smiled, said, "I like the weight of this one." It was a small thing. Dumb, even. But I remembered Chris once ranting about how much he hated that mug. Why would she choose that one? Why would he let her? That's when I started paying attention. Madison was around more than usual. She wasn't staying over officially, but she always had a reason to be there. Dropping off soup, bringing over new books she thought I'd love. Helping Chris with post-recovery stretching. Always thoughtful. Always helpful. But never with me. She'd corner him in the kitchen, her voice low and warm. They'd speak in half sentences and glance at each other like I wasn't in the room. Sometimes I'd walk in and they'd pull apart, not guiltily, but too fast. One afternoon, I opened our shared laptop to check my email. A notification popped up. Chris's calendar reminder. 7 p.m., same place. No details, no context. My stomach tightened. I clicked around, but his email was logged out. Slack, too. I tried not to overreact, told myself it could be a meeting, a client, anything. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted. That there were now conversations happening in rooms I wasn't invited into. So I began watching quietly. I didn't confront, didn't accuse. I just started logging the inconsistencies. Chris said he was at work late, Madison texted me a picture of her solo dinner from the exact restaurant he mentioned. He claimed to be exhausted after a long day, yet his shirt smelled faintly of her perfume. I knew it because it was the same scent she used in college, fig and vanilla. I'd borrowed it once before a date. Their inside jokes multiplied. Phrases they'd finish for each other. Glances that lasted a second too long. I felt like I was watching a play, standing backstage, hearing laughter from an audience that wasn't meant to include me. The most damning moment came when I borrowed Chris's phone to call the plumber. He hesitated. Just a flicker, but enough. He handed it over, and while dialing, I saw the recent call list. Madison's name. 6 calls. That week. No missed calls, just outgoing. From him. Still, I couldn't prove anything. Not yet. But a seed had been planted. A cruel, jagged seed that grew every time they laughed, every time they whispered, every time I caught my reflection in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. I wasn't just the woman who gave him her kidney anymore. I was the third wheel in my own marriage. There's a moment in every betrayal when instinct gives way to intention. I'd spent weeks collecting fragments, odd glances, shared silences, scent trails, slip-ups. But deep down, I knew I needed more than feelings. I needed something real, something I couldn't explain away. So, I began digging, not recklessly, quietly. I started with Madison. One night, she left her phone on the coffee table while she went to take a call outside. It buzzed. Once, twice. I didn't look at the messages, but I noticed the wallpaper, a picture of Mount Rainier at sunset. She used to hate that hike, said it was too vertical and not enough wine at the end. Chris, however, had always loved it. The photo wasn't the damning part. The damning part was that I hadn't seen her take that picture. But I had seen it on Chris's Instagram, months ago, back when he still used to post. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe she'd been with him that day. And they just hadn't told me. That night, after she left, I waited until Chris was asleep and quietly checked his phone. He'd changed his passcode. That was new. For years, we'd shared everything. Passwords, bank accounts, devices. There had never been a wall. Now there was one, glowing cold and blue in my hand. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Finally, I tried his birthday. No. Madison's? Still no. My own? The screen unlocked. I shouldn't have felt proud, but I did. Like somewhere inside him, he still believed I deserved access. Or maybe he never expected me to try. The call logs were clean. The texts were worse. Madison's thread was gone, deleted. Except, there was one message left in the archive folder, dated a week back. It was short. I miss you, but I'm tired of hiding. No name, no context, just pain. I didn't cry. Not then. I copied the message, sent it to myself, and deleted the record of it ever being opened. I wanted more. The next day, I told Chris I was working late and drove across town to Madison's apartment. I knew her building code, same one since college. Her lights were on, music playing. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:03 p.m., Chris's car pulled in. He didn't even hesitate. Walked up, punched the code, and disappeared inside like he'd done it 100 times. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel like it might hold me together. The betrayal wasn't just in the cheating. It was in the casualness, the comfort, the routine. They'd done this before, and they thought I was too blind or too grateful to see it. I drove home on autopilot. Didn't scream. Didn't break anything. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the floor of the kitchen, and stared at the clock. 40 minutes later, Chris walked in, kissed me on the head, and said, "Long day?" I nodded. He smiled, and in that smile, I saw something terrifying. He believed I'd never know. That I was so loyal, so soft, so grateful for his survival, that I'd never question him. That night, I slept beside him, skin burning with betrayal and resolve. The kidney I'd given him might have kept him alive, but now, It would be the reason he'd never see what was coming. I didn't plan to confront them right away. I thought I needed more time, more evidence, more clarity, more courage. But betrayal has a way of cornering you when you least expect it. The breaking point came the following Saturday. Madison invited us over for dinner. I almost laughed when Chris showed me the text. The audacity, the comfort. They'd grown so confident in their lie, so sure of my blindness, they didn't even bother hiding anymore. "Should we go?" he asked casually, like it was any other evening. I smiled. "Sure, why not?" That night, I didn't wear makeup, didn't try to pretend. I wore the same navy sweater Chris used to say made me look soft, a word I'd come to resent. The apartment smelled like rosemary and garlic. Madison opened the door, wine in hand, wearing a silk dress I'd complimented once and never saw again. Until now. Chris handed her a bottle like a routine, brushing her fingers just a second too long. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. We sat at the table, candlelight flickering between us, and I felt like a ghost in a scene from my own life. They talked. I listened. I sipped my wine and waited. Halfway through the meal, I leaned back and said, "You two make a lovely couple." The room froze. Chris blinked. Madison's fork clinked against her plate. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice too high, too light. I repeated slowly, "You make a lovely couple. You've clearly spent enough time rehearsing for the role." Chris cleared his throat. "Aubrey, what are you talking about?" I tilted my head. "Come on. You're not really going to pretend, are you? Not after the wine glass, the deleted texts, the Tuesday nights at her place." Madison stood up. "This is insane." "Is it?" I said. "Because I sat outside your apartment 3 nights ago and watched my husband walk in like he owned the place." Her face dropped. Chris, to his credit, didn't even try to deny it. He just stared at me, expressionless, calm. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said finally. "Didn't mean?" I echoed, my voice cracking. "You slept with my best friend while recovering from a surgery I risked my life to give you. You didn't mean to?" He looked down. "Things changed after the transplant." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Yeah, they sure did." Then I turned to Madison. "How long?" I asked. "Be honest." She hesitated, then said quietly, "About 6 months." 6 months. So it wasn't just a slip. It was a relationship. A life, forming behind my back while I packed his pills and sat by his hospital bed. "You could have told me," I said. "Either of you. You could have just been honest." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "You both did." Chris stood up like he'd had enough. "Look, I'm sorry it happened this way, but maybe this is for the best. We've been drifting. You and me." "And whose fault is that?" I snapped. "You stopped being my husband the moment you started lying." He didn't reply. I stood too, pulled something from my bag and placed it on the table, a printed copy of the archived message. "I miss you, but I'm tired of hiding." Madison read it. Her lip trembled. "I'm not asking for apologies," I said. "I'm not even angry anymore. Just done." I walked out before they could respond. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just left, because the truth had finally stepped into the light. And with it, every illusion I'd been clinging to evaporated. They thought they had the upper hand, but they didn't know I'd already started building my next move. And this time, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing. Chris moved out the next morning. No dramatic goodbyes. No begging or yelling or late-night confessions. He packed a duffel bag, avoided my eyes, and mumbled something about needing space. I didn't ask where he was going. I already knew. Madison didn't reach out. Not that day, not that week, not even a single text to check if I was breathing. The silence between us was louder than any apology could have been. For the first 3 days, I floated. I went through the motions, showering, dressing, feeding myself, like I was playing a role I hadn't auditioned for. The house was quieter without him, but not in a peaceful way. It felt stripped, like someone had walked through every room and taken the warmth with them. But then, something strange happened. I stopped waiting for the crash. The grief came in flashes. Yes, but so did clarity. So did anger. Not the kind that burned hot and fast, but the kind that settled deep and slow like stone. He hadn't just cheated. He'd used me, taken my body, my trust, my stability, and repurposed it as his own safety net. Madison hadn't just betrayed a friend. She'd calculated, waited, stepped in when I was weak and he was vulnerable, and built something on the ruins of us. So I made a choice. No begging, no second chances, no vengeance screaming through megaphones. I'd take my pain and turn it into precision. First, I went to a lawyer. We'd never signed a prenup. Everything was joint. The house, the savings, the investments. Chris had always insisted on transparency, on we're in this together. Now that worked in my favor. I filed for divorce quietly. Moved half our liquid assets into a protected trust with my name only. My lawyer helped me gather bank statements, property records, insurance policies. I'd always let Chris handle the big stuff, mortgages, taxes, retirement accounts. That ended now. Then I changed all my passwords. I took his name off everything he didn't notice still had my name on it. Subscriptions, utilities, even the Netflix account he mooched from while lying beside her. He thought I'd crumble. He thought giving him a kidney meant I'd given up my spine. He didn't know I'd been watching, learning how he moved, how he manipulated, how he smiled his way through betrayal. I even made an appointment with a private investigator, not because I needed more proof for me, but because I knew Chris wouldn't go down without trying to flip the narrative. I wanted documentation, dates, photos, evidence of the months they overlapped, while I was still cooking his meals and rubbing his scar with vitamin E oil. And then I waited while the divorce papers worked their way through the system. Waited while Madison kept her distance. Waited while Chris sent short clinical texts about logistics and splitting the furniture. He was still under the impression this would be civilized. He had no idea he'd already lost everything that mattered. I didn't scream, didn't confront again, didn't give him the satisfaction of my pain. Instead, I let him keep thinking I was soft. That was the gift I gave him, after everything. Because while he sat in her apartment, sipping wine from my favorite glasses, he had no idea. The real reckoning hadn't even started yet. It was a Friday when I got the message that changed everything. Aubrey, I need to talk to you. Alone. Madison. I almost deleted it, but curiosity is a powerful thing. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the university, a place we used to study together back when life was simpler and loyalty wasn't a currency to be spent. She looked thinner, tired, makeup barely covering the dark circles under her eyes. But what struck me most was the way she wouldn't meet my gaze. "I'm sorry," she said softly. I didn't respond, just waited. She took a deep breath. I thought I could do it, thought I could build something real with him, but he's not who I thought he was. I raised an eyebrow. What exactly did you think he was? She hesitated, then said, I knew you two had investments. I thought if I was close to him, maybe I could help him grow it. He mentioned the biotech account and the crypto fund, and there it was, the truth. Ugly and strategic. Madison had never loved Chris. She'd targeted him for access, for leverage, for greed. The betrayal wasn't about romance. It was business. I leaned back, oddly calm. So you used my husband, the man I gave a kidney to. She winced. I didn't plan it that way. I just saw an opportunity, and then it got complicated. And now? She looked down. Now he's trying to move all the money into a private account, without your signature. And he's been talking to a lawyer about contesting the divorce assets. I felt the flicker of anger rise, but only for a second, because I'd been waiting for this. Preparing. Did you help him? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. But what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd already moved our joint investments into a frozen trust weeks ago. Legal, untouchable. My lawyer made sure of it. I stood to leave, but paused. Thank you, Madison, for confirming everything. She looked up, confused. That weekend, I released a blog post, anonymous at first, a first-person account titled, "I gave my husband a kidney. He gave my best friend a key to our bed." I didn't name names, didn't have to. Enough people in our circle knew the story. The initials, the timeline. It went viral within 48 hours. People love a good betrayal. But what they love even more is when the betrayed fights back. By Monday, Chris's firm put him on leave, pending review. Madison's name was quietly removed from her company's upcoming investment panel. Sponsors backed out. Her LinkedIn went private. Chris texted me, furious. "How could you do this? You're ruining my life." I replied with 4 words. "You ruined your own." But the final twist? It came 2 weeks later. Madison emailed me again. No apology this time. Just one bitter line. He tried to move in with me. I said no. Poetic justice. She used him for power. He used me for survival. And in the end, both of them were left with nothing but each other. Until even that crumbled. I didn't feel triumphant. Not in the way movies make you believe revenge should feel. There was no thunderous score. No fist-pumping moment where I shouted, "I won!" There was just quiet, a kind of silence I hadn't heard in years. One that didn't hum with tension or hold its breath, waiting for the next betrayal. Just stillness. Chris stopped trying to reach out after that final text. Madison disappeared back into whatever city would still take her. And me? I stayed in the same house. The same bed, the same kitchen with its chipped countertops and stubborn drawer that never quite closed all the way. At first, I thought I'd sell the place, burn it down emotionally, if not literally. But something stopped me, because the house wasn't the problem. The lies weren't in the walls. They were in the people I'd let live beside me. So I reclaimed it. I took down every picture with his face in it, boxed them up, not with hate, but with finality. I painted the guest room a soft green, the room Madison used to stay in. I donated the Navy mug. I rearranged the living room, not because I needed a change, but because I finally could. Every piece of furniture had been agreed upon. Now it was my decision, my shape, my space. The first night I slept alone in the new house, I slept deeply, dreamlessly. I woke up not with tears, but with hunger, for coffee, for sunlight, for something new. That's how I knew I was healing, not because I forgot, but because I no longer needed to remember to survive. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Not the blog, not the revenge, just me and a pen. My thoughts, my grief, my growth. I reconnected with people I'd let drift, co-workers, my cousin in Oregon, my old friend Elena, who always sent holiday cards even when I didn't reply. I told them the truth, not the scandalous version, but the real one. I lost 2 people I loved, but I didn't lose myself. They listened. They didn't pity me, and that too was healing. One afternoon, I walked by a community center flyer. Peer coaching for women starting over. I signed up before I could talk myself out of it. The next week, I stood in front of a room full of strangers and said, "Hi, my name is Aubrey. I gave my husband a kidney. He gave my best friend a bed, and somehow, I'm still here." They laughed. Some cried. I did both. But I wasn't ashamed. I was alive. I was free. The scar on my side, once a reminder of sacrifice, became a symbol of resilience. I didn't cover it up anymore when I wore swimsuits. I didn't hide it when I changed at the gym, because I'd earned that scar. It wasn't proof of what I lost. It was proof of what I gave, and more importantly, what I would never give again without being sure it was deserved. Some days are still hard. Grief doesn't ask for permission or check your calendar, but it visits less often now. And when it does, I let it sit beside me for a while. Then I ask it to leave. Because I have things to do, a life to build, a peace that isn't dependent on someone else's presence or absence. And somewhere in the middle of all this, I realized something. I didn't need to destroy them to win. I just needed to choose myself. And that That was the real revenge. People always talk about betrayal like it's a single event, like a knife to the back. One motion, one moment. But the truth is, betrayal often happens in layers, in silence, in the moments when someone you love chooses not to choose you, over and over again. I used to think love was about sacrifice, about giving without expecting anything in return. And yes, love requires effort, compromise, trust, but not at the cost of your own dignity. Giving Chris my kidney wasn't the mistake. The mistake was ignoring all the ways he had already stopped choosing me long before that hospital room. I gave him a piece of my body, thinking it would bring us closer. But sometimes, when people take from you, they keep taking, because they believe you'll never say stop. This experience taught me that forgiveness isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's about setting them down gently and walking away lighter. It taught me that boundaries aren't selfish. They are sacred. That survival is noble, but self-respect is non-negotiable. And maybe the biggest lesson? Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need to burn bridges or scream in someone's face. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is rebuilding your life so beautifully that their absence feels like a favor. So if you've ever been used, betrayed, or broken, please hear this. You are not what they did to you. You are who you become despite it.